people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome. And let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Welcome to Compassion Fatigue, Understanding and Overcoming as a Caregiver. We're going to be talking about the well-being of those who dedicate themselves to caring for others. Welcome, my name is Lori Hendren. I'm the Senior Associate State Director for AARP Illinois. AARP is proud to be able to empower people to choose how they age. AARP Illinois represents 1.7 million members, but most importantly, we represent all of those that are 50 plus across the state. Today, we're going to be bridging together our commitment to enhancing the lives of older adults with practical support. We are placing strong emphasis on acknowledging and supporting the often overlooked challenges faced by unpaid family caregivers. The responsibilities of caregiving, though fulfilling, often lead to caregiver stress and burnout due to their significant challenges. To better understand these difficulties and discuss effective support strategies, we are joined today by a distinguished expert in the field who's joined us before, and to shed some light on navigating the complexities of caregiving and the emotions you may be having. We welcome today's Kate. She is a licensed clinical social worker, the founder and therapist of Life Changes Counseling Care Planning. She is also director of the Clinical Practice with Older Adults Professional Development Program at the University of Chicago Crown Family School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice, and the immediate past president of the Illinois Coalition of Mental Health and Aging. And we thank you, Kate, for being here. Kate, without further ado, let's get to our questions. And then also, if you're joining us, we want to hear from you. This is interactive. Please post your questions, whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, in the comments, and we'll be able to do our best to get to them. You can talk with Kate. Kate, what is compassion fatigue and how does it differ from caregiver burnout?
Sure. So it's a really common misunderstanding because these issues are very similar, but also subtly different. So burnout really tends to happen slowly over time and is really related to having to do more with less. So having to have more responsibilities, maybe with less sense of resources available to us, whereas compassion fatigue actually includes burnout. Compassion fatigue is burnout plus experiencing what we call secondary traumatization. That sounds scary, but basically what that means is that when we are helping people who are going through something extraordinarily stressful, maybe life-threatening, like a chronic illness, a sudden change in health, um, those people are experiencing what we might call a traumatic change. And so as caregivers, we might be experiencing compassion fatigue when we're starting to feel like we're doing more with less, feeling a little disengaged, overburdened. That's the burnout piece. plus now taking on some of that trauma, stress from the person who we're caring for. So we might even call that like empathy fatigue. Our big hearts of caring are getting also that we're getting pained because we're seeing people
Right.
suffer. Someone's
Mm.
suffering, we're seeing them suffer, we're taking that on.
This is interesting because we hear so often about burnout, but I think this conversation really is another step in understanding and giving some compassion to yourself, to knowing the kind of what is happening, and I would say to remove a little bit of the guilt because these are things that are happening to you. So if
Yes.
you're a caregiver, how can you be able to identify these early signs of compassion fatigue?
Absolutely. So, like we were talking about, the burnout component is easier for people to notice because I'll often hear people saying, I'm overwhelmed. There's too much to do. I don't have time in the day. I'm
Mhm.
not sleeping well. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling irritable. Right? We're going to watch for those signs. And then for the compassion fatigue part, that's often where we feel that sadness, maybe a
Oh.
little bit of fear at times, if that gets really intense, we might even notice that we feel a little shut down, cut off. And so, what we really want to be mindful of is if we start to feel like we are withdrawing or shutting
Mhm.
down within our own sense of our bodies and our relationships, maybe our work outside of the caregiving relationship, maybe even within the caregiving relationship. Those are going to be some key signs that it's time to take action.
Okay, so if let's I'm gonna walk us out a little bit here. So
Sure.
withdrawing. So
Yes.
let's say you're pretty jovial at work,
Mhm.
you're always talking, and you just like, I just can't. I have no like my emotional well is dry. I got
Yes.
nothing else to give. Would that be kind of, one could say I'm just tired, I didn't sleep enough, but in reality, could that be an example?
Absolutely. So that sense, sometimes I'll use the term bandwidth. What do we feel we can still give without giving so much that now we are suffering? So oftentimes that sense of withdrawal might be turning down invitations that maybe in the past we used to look forward to. Things in our
Mhm.
lives that we've always enjoyed or maybe given us a spark. And now it's not so
Mhm.
enjoyable anymore. That would be an example of withdrawal.
So, what are the main causes of compassion fatigue in with caregivers, and especially someone who's never ever, I mean, this is a side question, never felt this way before? I mean, I think they could also confuse it with depression or
Mhm.
anxiety, which may be a component, but so what are the main causes of compassion fatigue for caregivers?
Yes. So a lot of it is that difficulty transitioning to this new role, especially if it is a new role. You mentioned that that can
Mhm.
be particularly challenging. Um, so in that transition, we might notice that we've gone from knowing ourselves in one way to noticing that we ourselves have changed. We're feeling different. Maybe we are beginning to question how much longer we can do the caregiving that we're doing,
Oh.
right? That might be another sign. And you mentioned depression and anxiety. A lot of these conditions and circumstances overlap. We know that compassion fatigue, burnout, anxiety, depression, they all overlap together. So, some of the common things that we might be familiar with related to depression, related to anxiety, those could also be signs that compassion fatigue is beginning to set in, especially if the person who we're caring for is really going through intense crises, or again, that sense that life is at risk, or the life that we've known is at risk.
Mm.
That might be the person we're caring for's life changing in that way, or even our own, because now this person who we love is having so many changes. Therefore, our
Mhm.
lives are changing too.
Wow. So look, give me some more examples of
Sure.
what a caregiver, let's say you've been married 43 years and your loved one now has the onset of Alzheimer's, and you start they don't identify you as a wife, and it's hard to identify them as your spouse because of the condition. As a caregiver, what are some of the things that you shouldn't be feeling guilty about,
Mm,
being frustrated? I mean, I guess this is a very complex question, but there's a lot of emotions you as a caregiver go through, and though you can feel that, but then is how you react to those feelings, right? So they may manifest by not sleeping very well or have higher anxiety. What
Mhm.
are some of those things that someone can go, okay, it's okay? What are some of those that someone might be feeling and can identify them as compassion fatigue?
Absolutely. So, number one, compassion fatigue, if we strip it down, it's really long term chronic stress. And all of our bodies respond to stress. And so, those common stress responses that are telling us there's something wrong, we need to pay attention. We need to maybe be kind to ourselves and recognize this is normal. This is just what the body
Mm,
does when it's trying to navigate significant stress over a period of time. You mentioned one, changes in sleep, maybe not being able to sleep or sleeping too much, fatigue, low energy, maybe changes in appetite, not being hungry, eating too much. Others can include our mood, feeling
mm,
irritable, on edge. Maybe we're arguing more.
mm,
Maybe we are getting into a challenging situation where we're faced with so many problems that it's tough to determine how to prioritize the problems and how to
yes.
solve them. Those would be also signs that, like, this is normal. This is part of what happens when we're going through the things that happen when we're caregiving. And it doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it. We can tend to ourselves, we can reach out for help. But those would be some beginning things to look for.
Wow. I think can your stress sometimes be so overwhelming when you're in that caregiving situation that you can almost break out in hives or even the stress goes up to a shingles level? Is
Mm.
that something that can happen as well?
That's a good question. I myself, because I'm not a physician, don't know about the
Mhm.
specific diagnostic pieces, but we know that the stress response, because it's a natural body response, is pushing out chemicals and hormones throughout our body. And over time, that begins to affect almost all of our body systems. So the most common body symptoms that are related to stress are number one, our GI system. We might notice
Mm,
upset stomach, nausea, difficulty with going to the bathroom or going to the
mhm,
bathroom too much. We might notice in our muscles, muscle tension, feeling unable to relax our muscles, headaches,
mm.
or the proverbial, this, I know this happens to me. My shoulders are up to my ears and I don't even realize it.
Yeah, yeah.
The other could be certainly in our nervous system, that anxious, on edge, moodiness, or sadness and feeling shut down, numb. And then we know that sometimes even our respiratory, our breathing system can get affected.
Mhm.
When we're under stress, we tend to hold our breath or constrict our breath. And so if we're noticing that, that is another
Yeah.
way that stress starts to affect us. And then in a dangerous way, unfortunately, long-term stress can affect our heart and impact our heart health, can cause or exacerbate high blood pressure. So there really are things that happen in our body when we're going under these kinds of stresses. That's not our fault. That's not something related to who we are as a person. That's just what our bodies do when they're trying to survive, as we're seeing someone else trying to survive.
Trying to survive, that is so imperative. So, let's talk about the self-care. How can you manage and overcome? I think that's 2 different things. There's managing in the moment
Mhm.
and then being able to overcome as a caregiver with compassion fatigue.
Yes. So the management, earlier you said something, and viewers might have noticed I had a big smile. And that was the idea that there's how we react to our situations. So, as a mental
Mm,
health professional in counseling and talk therapy, a lot of what we do, at least in the way that I tend to approach talk therapy,
mhm,
is looking at, like, what is the situation? More often than not, there might be things in the situation we cannot change. And so, if we can't change, if we can't problem solve a situation, then we need to look at how are we reacting, right? Are we reacting in a way that increases our stress? Or are we reacting in a way that
Mhm.
maybe buffers that stress, keeps it in a manageable amount? So, some things we can do to that is number one, noticing. Right? In that moment, how are we responding? What are we noticing in our body? What are we noticing in our thoughts? And what can we do to shift that reaction so that if what we're seeing is that we're really on edge or we're ready to jump and kind of feeling like we want to attack someone or argue with someone, it's really common. Okay, how can I slow that down? If I'm feeling frustrated with maybe the doctor's office, what am I frustrated about? How can I be specific and assertive about that and tell them this is my problem? I need help with it. So that's an extended example of
Mhm.
reaction to what is naturally going on. Some other ways of tending to ourself is things that we feel bring us some joy. I mentioned earlier that sometimes when we're under so much stress, we might start to lose the joy that we felt in things
Mm.
in the past.
Mhm.
That being said, we may, even in the midst of some of the worst stress, be able to think of something that gives us that little spark, gives us that little sense of relief, maybe even brings a small smile to our face. So if we can identify what that is, brings that into our lives at least a few times a week. And that sounds maybe oversimplifying or a little Pollyanna. But the reason that we want to be able to focus on these moments of joy, these moments of release, is that when we have that experience, our bodies release a different kind of chemical that offsets all the stress chemicals. So if we can give ourselves those little doses of relaxation, joy, contentment, calm, that
Mhm.
slowly offsets the stress response. So it's almost like it's not a one for one exchange, but we want to say if the stress is this high, we want to try and bring in some alternatives that counter it almost just as high. And so those positive things, those joyous things, gratitude for things that are going well in your life, they don't have to do with caregiving. It can be anything. The things that are going okay, that can help. And then another thing that can be really helpful before we get into some of the really core skills of relaxation skills is being able to be flexible with ourselves and recognize, like, even though we believe we can do it all, maybe the person we're caring for believes we can do it all. That's just not realistic. So, okay, how can we see what is realistic for us and how we can fit that with what the demands are for us, whether it's from the person who we're caring for or the other responsibilities that we have in life?
Wow. That's a lot of goodness you just gave to us. And I thought, you know, if someone is in that high stress, is there something, and maybe I'm skipping, like something you can visualize? Let's say if you love the ocean,
Mhm.
can you just, for a second count back to 10 with the waves? Like almost, you wouldn't know it's like a meditation, but is there something that, but all of a sudden, if you're here, you can go
Mhm.
to here. Can you give listeners an example of one that they could take away and even practice when we're done today?
Yes, absolutely. So you've been trained really well in what we call relaxation activities. And the one that you named is one that we call guided imagery, which can be really helpful because it gives us something for our brain to focus on, because we know our brain is going to want to go in a million different directions. So guided imagery gives us something for our brain to focus on as well as our body to focus on. So we'll use
Mhm.
your example of the ocean. So, guided imagery is important because, again, as we're doing this exercise and other quote unquote relaxation exercises, our body's chemicals are going to start to shift, and that stress response is going to start to be turned down. It's rarely going to be
Mhm.
turned off, but the fact that it's being turned down is what's helpful. So, you can sit or lay in a position that's comfortable for your body. Begin by doing some slow, deep breaths in through your nose. Imagine or try to bring that breath all the way down towards your belly button or the bottom of your lungs. And when your lungs are full or your belly is extended, slowly exhale that out through your mouth. Do that 3 to 4 times. That begins the relaxation response. Then imagine a calming, soothing image for you. That can be
Mm,
anything. So, for some people, myself included, that's a beach. Imagine that image. Now, engage with that image in your mind as you continue to just gently breathe. And you want to use all of your senses to engage in that image of, for example, the beach. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you feeling or touching? What are you maybe even tasting? What are
mm,
you hearing? So imagine that image almost like a photograph or a painting and get engaged in it. All the while, your breath is slow. You're just present with that image in this moment, and do that
mhm.
maybe even for 1 minute. Ideally, if you have the time, we would really recommend to do that for 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes, but 1 minute counts. So that would be one example, and that is, again, a relaxation exercise. There are many relaxation exercises that work because they are literally offsetting the biological stress response. And I think that it's important, I'm emphasizing that because so many of our programs for caregivers that are available, as well as in talk therapy, we talk about relaxation exercises. We might even have read about relaxation exercises, but oftentimes we miss giving caregivers the message that the reason that relaxation exercises is important is because of this literal body based phenomena of the chemicals and hormones that happen with the stress response. The only way
Oh,
that we can control that is to try and offset it with relaxation activities or talking with our physician about how much stress that we're under to see if there is something medical that we might need to tend to, especially if we have other chronic health conditions. So it's literally taking care of our bodies. That has nothing to
mm.
do with who we are as a person. We're just organic, is what I like to say. And sometimes we need to tend to that because over time, like we talked about earlier, that stress is going to start to wear away at our bodies, our health, our emotional health, and our ability to be there for the person who we want to take care of.
So that goes into our next question. What are some of the long-term effects if you do not address compassion fatigue as a caregiver?
Yes. I hate to be dire or scary, but
Mhm.
sometimes the effects are dire. I have heard multiple times from people who I've worked with as caregivers who have ended up having health emergencies themselves, even so much as to having to a heart attack, being hospitalized, and then having to scramble to find care for that person who they were caring for because now they're in the hospital. So we do know that there are these effects on these different body systems that we talked about earlier. Heart being one of them that's most dangerous, of course. Heart also can be related to stroke, high blood pressure. If we have chronic diseases that have a strong connection to stress, things like diabetes, we know has a high connection to stress. We know that any kind of heart disease has a high connection to stress. Even autoimmune diseases have a high connection to stress. So any condition we already have could be worsened. Or if we might have a predisposition to those diseases in the first place, unchecked stress, unchecked compassion fatigue could unfortunately bring on some of those diseases if we don't tend to it. So it is kind of a dangerous situation potentially, which is why we want to raise awareness, let caregivers know like this is normal. They are not alone. There are things that they can do that are free or low cost. And also, yes, let your doctor know I'm a caregiver. This is what I'm experiencing on top of my other responsibilities in life.
That is, yes. So, I want to go to one, free resources.
Mhm.
One, I think that's important because we have someone who's on came with us on YouTube caring for their loved one, 97-year-old wheelchair-bound mother. Loved one doesn't want to have anyone come in the home. She's getting, I'm imagining it's a she, is getting no time, or he's getting no time to themselves. So Let's talk about, you've talked about the breathing and the imagery. What are free resources that is available? Like ARP, we have a tremendous volume of resources for caregiving and guides, but also we host these virtual events and support groups because this is where conversation starts to being able to do in-person professional counseling or even telehealth that you can do from your phone, right?
Mhm.
If you can even sit in the bathroom by yourself for 15 minutes to be able to talk with someone. So let's go through that, Kate. What is available to caregivers?
Yes. So there are a number of different free or low cost resources. As you mentioned, I know AARP has a resource area for caregivers, which is really robust. I don't just say that because I'm
Mhm.
here, like, I recommend that to people as well. I've been professionally impressed by that. Through our Department on Aging, caregivers may qualify for either free or low cost resources specifically for them, as well as potentially for the person who they're caring for. And so you can find your area agency on aging, that's the name of the type of organization you want to look for, through the elder care locator. So even if you Google elder care locator, it's a
Mhm.
.gov website. It also has a phone number, that's an 800 number. They will tell you this is your area agency on aging. You can then call them, say, I'm a caregiver and here's my situation. Like, my loved one doesn't want anyone else to come in the home. I'm exasperated. What resources do you have for me? Oftentimes, they do offer one on one counseling at a low or reduced rate. There are a number of what we call evidence based programs for caregivers that a lot of the area agencies on aging are offering. Those are typically multi week programs where you get to meet with other caregivers as well as trained leaders to learn things like stress relief, communication strategies to try and use with a loved one who's resistant to care, other ways of finding resources in your community. So I would definitely suggest that. And then if there is the ability to consider talk therapy, that's where you get one on one support. If you happen to have Medicare, because you also are an older person, Medicare covers talk therapy at 80%, which leaves 20% for either your supplement or secondary insurance or your out of pocket. And many providers are doing both in person as well as telehealth because we know caregivers don't have a lot of time. And so telehealth sometimes makes that really helpful and accessible, and it's covered the same way. And of course, many commercial insurances that we might have through our employer or maybe that we might get through the healthcare marketplace also cover mental health therapy.
Wow, that's wonderful. So that's a lot of great resources. And I know in our comments, we're posting a lot of this information. The ARP caregiving site,
Great,
which has a tremendous volume. And we also have one, since we're coming out of Illinois, the direct contact numbers for various area agencies and Aging's Department of Aging. We
great.
also are posting the Elder Care Locator. And then we're posting the ARP 1-800 resource line for you to know. So that's 1-877-333-5885. So again, these are resources. And also at the end of this our event, we're going to have a QR code and you can hold your phone and take your camera and it's going to pop up. And that's going to be all of ARP virtual events. So you're going to get them from all across that are free across the nation that's working for caregiving, but also some stuff for you for being able for entertainment, for being able to exercise, for yoga and meditation. We hear you, right? So we're going to make this as one-stop shop and a digital you can do it right on your iPhone, your iPad, whatever you have, right? It's there. So we're coming down to just a little bit of time left, Kate. And I'm you and your partner, Melissa, we could talk for hours. I learned so much about this and the application of daily life and understanding compassion. But if you are balancing it all, how can you talk to your family members, your immediate family, of what you're feeling for them to better understand you in your journey?
Yes, absolutely. Connect with what do you need? And that can be hard. So, what is it that you need? Maybe it's a break. Maybe you need someone to make meals. Connect with the things that are going to be helpful to you and say, right now, I'm having a tough time doing it all. I know that I want to do it all, but it's getting really hard. Would you mind helping me? Here's a list of things that would really make a difference to me. Is there one that you would be willing to do? Right? How can we negotiate that? And also, sometimes it's simply saying, I need someone to talk to. I need to be not as alone in this. Would you be willing to chat on the phone or maybe be my check in partner to say, hey, did you do your guided imagery today? Or I'm thinking of you. I have 10 minutes. What can I do to help you today? Or how can I come in to help you with mom, dad, whomever we're caring for? So the key thing is communication, being clear about what your needs are, and then being able to offer your family the specifics of things they can do right away that would make a big difference to you. I appreciate that sounds like an oversimplification, especially if
Mhm.
the family might really be struggling to appreciate how hard it is for the caregiver. But those would be some first steps because oftentimes people want to help, but they don't know how. And the other
Mhm.
thing is that if family or friends are offering help, accept it. And that can be
Take it.
really tough to do, but take
Mhm.
that because that is a gift. If they didn't want to help you, they wouldn't be offering. And
Mhm.
so receive that. That is okay. Again, that is not because you're doing the wrong thing, you're failing the person you're caring for. You need to take care of yourself while also taking care of the person who you're helping. And so receive that help just like you're willingly giving help.
That is absolutely wonderful. It's like and there should probably is a term, but we need people to care for our caregivers, right? My favorite people are the people that I'm gonna come in and ask how you're doing. I'm gonna text you every other day. Just a simple text. Just, "How are you doing? How are you doing?"
Mhm.
What's and even if you're not questioning one that makes the individual feel like they're weak or can't balance it all, it's a simple check-in. I think that's
Right,
just powerful. So,
right.
well, we've done it again. We've gone to a half an hour talking about this. We could go on forever. Thank you for all of those that are joining us today, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or you're on demand and you're watching this. We encourage you to share this with your family, friends, rewatch. A lot of great information, resources. Kate took us through a wonderful breathing exercise. And we can't do this without Kate and Melissa for your valuable insights and guidance. And for all of you family caregivers in Illinois, we have 1.3 million unpaid family caregivers doing remarkable work. And ARP is here advocating for you in community, online, and in capitals and state houses across the United States. To our caregivers, remember you are not alone. ARP is here to support you. And for resources on caregiving, ARP has a tremendous volume, whether it's financial workbooks, the guide on caregiving, how to have the conversations, www.aarp.org/caregiving. We're going to put that in the comments as well. No need to try to write it. And then we also have that phone number. Don't hesitate. Give us a call 1-877-333-5885 and it's help in caring for you and your loved one. Together, we are going to work to balance the scales of caregiving self care, but it's not easy. But having conversations today, educating ourselves, and coming at this with compassion and empathy and taking care of ourselves. I guess Kate is shaking her head. I'm saying it right. Pretty important. So we want to thank you all. Come with us. We have two more in this series. We're going to come back with Kate in a couple weeks and her partner Melissa, and we're going to tackle some more. We look forward and we want to hear from you and see you. So again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, Kate. As always,